Please don't embarrass me, my girlfriend of 2.5 years whispered at her cousin's wedding right before she moved me to table 11 so her male best friend could take my family seat. She swore it was a seating mix-up until the bride quietly handed me a screenshot of her 9:17 text, "Marcus won't mind." I left before dinner without saying a word, and by midnight, the whole family was asking her one question. My name is Marcus. I'm 31. Work as a project manager at a mid-size logistics company. Sarah is 29, works in marketing. We'd been together 2.5 years when this happened, and living together for about a year of that. I'm the kind of person who shows up. Not flashy, but consistent. Bills paid on time. The person you can call at 1:00 p.m. on a Tuesday and I'll actually answer. When Sarah had a bad week, I was there. I helped her move apartments twice the second time before we were even officially a couple. I was sitting across from her in her kitchen when she found out she didn't get the promotion she'd spent close to a year working toward. About 14 months in, a friend of hers looked at me across a dinner party table and said, laughing, "God, he's your rock, isn't he?" Sarah had laughed and agreed. I took it as a compliment. Being the stable one felt like something worth being. Jake had been in her life since before me. They'd met freshman year of college, lived in the same dorm hall. Sarah always described him as like a brother, and honestly, in the beginning, I accepted that. He was friendly enough when we crossed paths. He never did anything overtly wrong. He was just always there, always the next call, always somewhere in the background, always accounted for in whatever plan Sarah was making. Around 8 months in, I brought it up once. Said I was a little uncomfortable with how present he was in our day-to-day. Sarah told me I was being insecure. That Jake wasn't like that. That I'd always been weird about him. I didn't argue. I adjusted. That was my move. Apparently I said something once, got told I was misreading it, and then I found a way to fit myself around whatever shape the situation already had. I told myself that was what a secure person did. That making room for someone's long-standing friendships was the mature call. So I adjusted, and I told myself it was a choice. The wedding invitation for Emma, Sarah's cousin, had both our names on it. This wasn't a casual +1 situation. Emma and I had 2 years of actual friendship by that point. I bought a new suit. I cleared my Saturday with my manager a week in advance. On the drive over, Sarah told me twice not to embarrass her. I figured she meant the usual things. Don't drink too much. Don't tell the wrong story at the wrong moment. I straightened my tie and told her I had it. I didn't know she had already made a decision that morning. Before we left. Before I even got out of the shower. When we arrived, I checked the seating chart near the entrance. Table 3, family table. My name was there, printed on a small card, next to Sarah's. I relaxed a little. Got us both drinks, set my jacket over the back of my assigned chair, introduced myself to a couple of her relatives. It was easy. I was being exactly what she'd asked. She got pulled into bridal party photos. I waited near the bar, talked to her uncle for a few minutes about nothing important. I spotted Jake across the cocktail hour space, working the room, shaking hands with someone I didn't recognize. I noticed. I didn't react. Then Sarah came to find me, and I could tell before she said a word that it wasn't to check on me. She pulled me slightly to the side, kept her smile directed at people passing, and said, "There's been a seating mix-up. They had to reorganize table 3. You're going to table 11 for the evening. It's a nice table, I promise. I'll come find you between courses." I said, "What happened to the original arrangement?" "Jake's date canceled last minute. He needed a proper seat, close to people he knows." Then, "Please don't make this bigger than it is." I looked back at the seating chart. My name was gone from table 3. Not crossed out and handwritten over the card had been reprinted. Jake's name was there now, clean, in the same font as everyone else's. You don't reprint a seating card in the parking lot. Someone did this before we arrived. I wanted to ask when exactly this had been decided. I wanted to ask why Jake needing a seat meant I was the one who had to move. But she was already watching me with that particular look, the one that said she needed me to be easy right now, the way I always was. She put her hand on my arm. "Marcus, please, don't embarrass me." I nodded. She exhaled. She turned and walked back toward the family table. I stood there with my jacket over my arm and looked across the room at table 11. I made my way over and didn't sit down right away. I stood near the window and let myself think. The Christmas party from 2 years ago came back to me first. Sarah's work event. I'd been a few minutes late traffic. By the time I got there, Jake and Sarah had already settled into the 2 seats at our assigned table. Jake waved me over. "Easy," said, "grab a chair," man like he was being generous. I pulled one up from the table next to us and spent the evening sitting slightly sideways. At the time, it had felt like nothing, a minor inconvenience. I filed it away and let it go. The Friday dinners were harder to dismiss now. Once a month or so, Jake would call during dinner. Not once did Sarah step away. She'd answer at the table, stay seated, keep eating while she talked. "Sorry, he's going through something." It happened enough times that I stopped counting it. I absorbed it. I made it part of what normal looked like. Then the Savannah trip. We'd been planning it for that summer, and Sarah mentioned that Jake was also looking to travel that month. There was a pause in the conversation, maybe 3 or 4 seconds, and I didn't fill it. Neither did she. We booked Savannah for just the 2 of us, and the pause was never brought up again. I filed that one away too. At the time, filing things away felt like being reasonable. Standing at table 11, I was starting to understand it differently. About a year in, I had asked her, "Do you think Jake notices how much he texts?" She had looked at me in a way that felt more like patience than anything else, and said, "That's the difference between you two. You're the stable one." I had heard that as a compliment. Standing at table 11, with a glass of water I hadn't touched, I was hearing it differently. The stable one, the one who adjusts, the one who makes room without being asked, the one who doesn't push back. That was the role. And I had played it, consistently, for 2.5 years. Sarah's aunt appeared at my elbow, warm, genuine, pleased to have found me. She squeezed my arm and thanked me for being so understanding. Said Sarah had told her I was gracious enough to offer my seat when she explained about Jake. Said it like I'd done something kind, like it had been my idea. I said, "Of course. Happy to help." I excused myself, sat down at table 11, and picked up my phone. Before I opened anything on my phone, I looked back toward table 3. Sarah was already seated, laughing at something someone had said. Jake was leaning back in my chair, the one I'd set my jacket on 40 minutes earlier, with the ease of someone who'd always planned to be there. Not awkward about it, not compensating, just settled. 2 of Sarah's cousins glanced toward table 11 and looked away quickly. I recognized that look. It's the one people give when they've already been told a version of something. I mapped it out without wanting to. The aunt had thanked me for offering my seat. The cousins had heard something probably softer, probably framed as a last-minute shuffle that Marcus was totally fine with. Sarah was at the table, comfortable, and her phone was lit up in her hand. The bridesmaids group, probably, the version being circulated in real time. The structure was clear. Her version of events. Jake's date canceled at the last minute. There was a seating complication. Marcus was gracious about it. Everything worked out. Jake looks like someone who needed looking after. Sarah looks thoughtful. And I either stay at table 11 and confirm the story, or I go back to table 3 and become the man who caused a scene at a family wedding over chair placement. The trap had been built before we walked in. I didn't go back to the table. A pleasant older couple was seated near me, friends of Emma's parents, kind people who asked how I knew the family. I said through Sarah. They said she was lovely. I agreed. I poured a glass of water and didn't drink it. And then Emma forwarded me something. No message. No explanation. Just a forward. The way you send something when you don't know what to say but you know the person should have it. The original message had a timestamp. Sibling to 17 a.m. Before the ceremony. Before we got in the car. Before she fixed my tie in the parking lot and told me not to embarrass her. It was a text chain. Sarah to Emma, from that morning. Sarah. Jake just confirmed he's coming solo. His date bailed last night. Emma. Oh no, is he okay? Sarah. He'll be fine. I'll look out for him. I'm going to move Marcus to table 11 so Jake can sit with us at the family table. Marcus won't mind. Emma. Are you sure? The chart is already printed. Sarah. I'll handle it. Don't worry about it. That was the whole thing. I'd been in the shower when she wrote that. We drove to the venue together after. She fixed my tie. She told me not to embarrass her, and she had already done this. I read it twice. Then a third time. The sentence I kept getting stuck on was Marcus won't mind. She hadn't asked me. She'd decided, before the day started, that her preference had more weight than my place at that table. Not just decided, she'd spoken for me. She'd determined how I would feel about something without checking. And then she stood next to me at the reception and called it a mix-up. She let her aunt thank me for offering something I had never offered. She called it a mix-up, and she looked me in the face and called it a mix-up. I put the phone in my jacket pocket. I was calm. Not the forced kind, not the performance. The kind that comes when something that has had no name for a long time finally has one. I'd been carrying the shape of this for 2 years. I just hadn't had it written down. About 20 minutes later, Sarah came to table 11. She set a glass of wine in front of me with a small smile, the kind that says we're okay, right, and asked if I was doing all right. Whether the table was comfortable. I said, I saw the message you sent Emma this morning. Her expression changed before she could manage it. Then it settled. What message? About moving me to table 11 so Jake could sit at the family table. A pause. She tilted her head slightly. That was taken out of context. Jake needed support tonight. His date canceled. I was just trying to think ahead. You said I wouldn't mind. You usually, she stopped. I waited. I just meant you're usually flexible about this kind of thing. You didn't ask me. She looked around the room. Not at me. Around the room. Can we please not do this here? I nodded. We won't. I picked up my jacket. I found Emma at the edge of the dance floor, mid-conversation with a couple of bridesmaids. I waited for a natural pause. When she saw me coming, something uncertain crossed her face. She'd sent that forward knowing what it meant, and she wasn't sure how this moment would go. I congratulated her. I meant it, this was her day, and she'd done nothing to me except be honest when she didn't have to be. I told her she looked genuinely happy, that it was a beautiful evening. I said, this was never about you. She nodded. She held out her hand, and when I shook it, she held on for a second longer than a handshake required. No other words were needed between us. I got my coat from the coat check. Stepped outside. The night air was sharp. I stood on the venue steps for a moment, not composing anything, not building up to a feeling. Just standing. I took out my phone and texted my friend David. Left early. I'll explain later. Then I got in my car and drove home. I wasn't performing calm. I wasn't suppressing anything or saving it for later. I was finished with the evening, with adjusting, with being the one who made room without being asked. The situation had been clear since I read that text at table 11, and once something is that clear, staying in the middle of it stops feeling necessary. I was home by 9:45. I made tea. I turned on the television and sat down. At 10:02, my phone rang. Sarah. I didn't pick up. A voicemail notification appeared at 10:09. I didn't listen to it. I went to bed at 11. The phone kept going through the night. I know because I checked it once, around 2 in the morning, out of something that wasn't exactly concern but wasn't nothing either. 6 missed calls. 6 voicemails. I put the phone face down and went back to sleep. I listened to all 6 the next morning. Made coffee first, then sat down at the kitchen table and played them in order. The first one had background noise music, people talking, the party still going. She sounded genuinely confused. Marcus, I can't find you anywhere. Are you in the bathroom? Call me back. She still thought I'd stepped away for a few minutes. The second one, the shift, please tell me you didn't leave. Marcus, please call me back. Something in her voice had changed. The confusion was giving way to something she didn't want to name yet. Third, the panic starting to clarify. People are asking where you went. I don't know what to tell them right now. Please, just call me. The fourth was the one that said the most. The background noise had dropped. She'd stepped somewhere quieter. Jake told some people you had a family thing come up. Can you just go with that if anyone asks? I'll explain everything when I get home. She had gone to Jake to clean up the situation she'd made. The person she'd moved me for was now the one managing my absence. The fifth, the frame had shifted completely. You're really doing this right now? At Emma's wedding? I'm sitting here dealing with this alone, and you just left. The thing she'd asked me not to do, embarrass her, had now been assigned to me. By not being there. By not playing my part. The sixth, a long silence at the start. 5, maybe 6 seconds. Then, quieter, fine, we'll talk when I get home. I listened to all 6 without stopping any of them. Then I put the phone on the table and typed one message. I found the message you sent Emma yesterday morning. I'm home. We can talk when you're back. Her reply came in 4 minutes. That was taken out of context. I put the phone face down on the counter. I put on my jacket and went for a walk. She got home early that afternoon. I was at the kitchen table when she came in. No notes in front of me, no prepared points, no printed evidence on the counter. Just my phone, face down, between us on the table. She started with logistics. She was tired, the night had been long, People had been asking about me for hours, and she'd had to field all of it on her own. She said this like it was the real problem, not what she'd done, but the management it had required afterward. I let her finish. Then I waited until she sat down. I turned my phone over and pushed it across the table toward her. The full screenshot. The whole text chain. The 9:17 a.m. timestamp at the top. She looked at the screen. She didn't look at me. It wasn't like that, she said. Then what was it like? Jake needed to be close to people he knew. His date canceled the night before. I was trying to look out for him. You decided I wouldn't mind. You usually. She stopped herself this time before she got there. You usually what? She didn't answer. You decided for me, I said. You told your family I offered. You let your aunt thank me for something I never did. I paused. Which part of that is taken out of context? She shifted in her chair. You have always been strange about Jake. This is exactly why I didn't tell you beforehand, because I knew you'd turn it into something. I looked at her. You knew I'd have a problem with it. So you didn't ask. You made the decision, and then you built a story around it. A pause. That's not a mix-up. That's a choice. She was quiet. I said, I'm not doing this to punish you, but I'm done being the one who adjusts. It wasn't a door slam. It wasn't a dramatic exit. It was one sentence, and then the particular quiet that follows when something is actually finished, not paused, not suspended, but done. Emma called about a week later. She wanted to apologize not for forwarding the text, she said, but for the situation itself. She hadn't known what Sarah was planning when they'd had that morning conversation. She thought Sarah was thinking out loud. She didn't realize she'd actually go ahead without asking me. She told me a few things from the reception I hadn't been there to see. Jake had spent most of the evening close to Sarah. He'd made toasts not to Emma and her husband, to the couple whose wedding it was, but to Sarah specifically, more than once. The people at table 3 had noticed. Emma had noticed. The he offered his seat story had started fraying before the cake was even cut. Sarah's different versions of it weren't adding up, and by the end of the night, Emma was the one being quietly asked to clarify what had actually happened. I told Emma she didn't owe me anything. I asked if the honeymoon was good. She said yes. That was the last time we talked about any of it. A few weeks after that, a message came from Priya. Priya had dated Jake briefly, a few months before Sarah and I got together. We'd stayed loosely connected through mutual people. She sent a screenshot without any message attached the way Emma had sent the text forward. No explanation, just, here. It was a text Jake had sent Priya about 2.5 years earlier, when Sarah and I were maybe 8 months in. He'd written, I don't get what she sees in him. He's boring. She could do a lot better. I sat with it for a while. He had been working on this, quietly, from early on. Every time Sarah said Jake's like a brother, every time she told me I was being weird about him, every time I backed down because I didn't have anything concrete and she'd made me feel like my instinct was the problem, he hadn't needed to do anything visible. He just needed to stay close and let me be the one who felt like the outsider. I saved the screenshot. I didn't send it to anyone. I just kept it as a record. Proof that I hadn't been wrong about the thing I'd been told I was wrong about. What I kept coming back to wasn't anger, exactly. It was something closer to relief. Not because things had ended the way they did, but because I finally had a word for the feeling I'd been carrying for 2 years without being able to name it. I had been managed. Not cruelly, not with malice, but consistently in the direction of least resistance, which happened to always be mine. The social picture shifted in the weeks that followed, the way it always does, slowly and unevenly. Mutual friends heard more. The he left over a seating issue story stopped holding once the morning text was out there. Inconsistencies surfaced. A professional connection I'd been a bridge for someone from my network, who'd gotten to know Sarah through me, stepped back after I was gone. Not because of anything I said, just the natural result of my absence from her life. I met someone about 4 months later. The relationship was uneventful in the best way. On our 3rd date, she asked what my last relationship had been like. I thought about it for a second. I spent a lot of time adjusting, I said. She asked, adjusting for what? I looked at her. That's exactly it. She laughed. I did too. I still have the screenshot of that morning text on my phone. I've never deleted it, not as evidence, not out of bitterness, just as a record. Something I knew was real. That I was told wasn't. That turned out to be exactly what I'd sensed all along. She told me not to embarrass her. I never did. But she never forgave me for it.